Testing, testing.
Norrin,
One, two.
welcome.
Great. I'm in.
It's always a happy surprise.
How are you?
Life is wonderful, and we already have a few people who've joined us. Thank you so much for coming. I hope everyone can hear.
Well, that is great. I'm hoping more than anything I can, with your permission, I'm looking on, and if I'm reading correctly, I believe I have, of course, our most distinguished host, Dr. Caroline Incredible Crawford.
Thank you for lying for me. I appreciate that a lot.
I believe I see Dr. Cynthia Wooden, Dr. Langdon Hadley, and wow, from Atlanta, the newly minted, my last dissertation advisee, Dr. Mary Anderson.
Mary, congratulations.
And look, being her background that she has been working in an IT environment, I'm glad to know she joined. She wants to learn from you as well.
Well, I hope I have something to share that's worthwhile. I'm sure she has plenty of information already.
Well, again, I want to, for the benefit of the order, knowing that with our Zoom, we have a timed classroom environment virtually. I don't want to take up a lot of time with salutations, but I did want to make sure I acknowledge that Dr. Linda Wilson-Jones. Linda, thank you so much for being innovative as a department chair and collaborating to make this effort of ours successful. So I got to give you a shout out so much. And from this point, I'm just going to listen to the one and only Caroline Crawford.
Thank you so much, Norrin. Norrin, thank you for inviting me. I'm so excited. I've worked with Norrin for so many years now, and he's amazing. And he's told me so many great things about your organization. I was really honored when I was offered the opportunity to come and chat with y'all. My name's Caroline Crawford. Thank you for the invitation to join y'all for about 40 minutes today. And my background, I've been working in university for about 18 years now, tenured associate professor, and everything I've done has been online learning for the past almost 25 years now. My doctoral studies were all about online learning. My dissertation was about the first NCATE online environment for all the documentations. So that's what actually helped me find my first job, because they were so desperate to figure out how to do this at another organization. Yay! So everything I've done has been about online, which is wonderful for me because I'm naturally a very shy person. So I love the concept of online, but the engagement is so important. So I'd like to talk with everyone today about, this is part one of a two-part series, and this is about adult learning and the online environment, and really what teacher educators and educational school leaders should consider when you're thinking about online, hybrid, blended environments, as well as the mobile environment is becoming hugely popular as well. My students range from K to 12, business industry, medical education, higher education. We have so many MDs and PhDs that pop up in my courses, and they're always saying, no, don't tell anyone else who I am. I'm just like everybody else. Like, all right, whatever, you are like anybody else. I don't care if you hold a doctorate or not. Everybody's a colleague in my class. So it's really exciting to find out what happens. But I'd like to share a little bit about what I've learned over the years with y'all and see if there are different ideas that might be useful within your own environment. So on that note, the presentation resources, thank you so much for joining. And we also have a little Today's Meet room over on the side. If you look over on the left-hand side of our screen, I have a running Today's Meet, which is really a back-channel chat type environment where you can post any questions or comments that you may have. And the URL is right there. The web address is right there for you to view and log in at any time. It's amazingly easy and free for your use. So the reason I wanted to use Today's Meet was to represent this little environment that you can use within your own instructional environments and within your own meetings, professional meetings, staff meetings, whatever it may be, that really helps engage the audience, the attendees. So One thing I'd like to bring forward is Malcolm Knowles' 6 Principles of Adult Learning. I find it so interesting that within our higher education environment, we're always talking about pedagogy, when pedagogy is actually about instructing the child and trying to teach the child and the child's learning process, when actually in higher education, the vast majority of the time, we're focusing upon andragogy, adult learning. And there are certain aspects of Knowles' theory of andragogy that are the focus of the discussion. So I just wanted to bring those forward, the 6 principles that adults are internally motivated and self-directed. They bring life experiences and prior knowledge to the learning experience, that they're absolutely goal-oriented. Tell me what I have to do. Give me the idea of how to get there and get out of my way is what I usually hear. Adults are relevancy-oriented if it impacts their job, if it impacts making sure that they progress forward in their career path and their personal path. It's important to them and they will focus upon it. And I find all these are also true of myself. If I'm not interested, if it's not helping me right now, tell me why it's important for me to know, or I'm just going to block it all out. I don't care. So all of these are not only viable with our students, but also with myself. Adults are practical, and adult learners like to be respected, which is huge in my classes. I call everyone colleague. It's not instructor student. It's everyone's a course colleague, and that's something that, interestingly enough, is highlighted in my unsolicited comments as well as course evaluations, that just the little aspects like calling our colleagues course colleagues in the class makes a huge difference to the learners, which I'm really surprised about, but also I want to be respected. I imagine everyone else does as well. So highlighting the differentiation between pedagogy and andragogy just one more time. There's this great little graphic table that I've located, and I always go back to whenever I'm talking with someone, they don't quite understand what I'm talking about, what's the difference between pedagogy and andragogy, and the whole tabula rasa, blank slate discussion doesn't quite work. I always go to this graphic, which is a beautiful layout of what are the actual differentiations between pedagogy and andragogy. So looking at the learner, andragogy, the learners are self-directed. They're responsible for their own higher order learning efforts, and self-evaluation is characteristic of this approach. Whereas in pedagogy, the teacher is much more the evaluator, where in the andragogical realm, it's much more so the learner evaluating their own progression forward, their own viability within the instructional process and the assessment process, as well as I try to extend the evaluation process beyond just the instructor and the learner to much more of a community type realm, and I'll talk about that in a second. But there are so many different aspects between pedagogy and andragogy, and it just kind of ticks me a little bit when I hear people talking about adults in pedagogy. I'm like, a totally different learner. So these are some aspects that I'm going to be bringing forward. The reason I'm offering this graphic is because the different andragogical bullets that are listed in this graphic, I'm going to align what I do in my classes with the andragogical aspects, characteristics that are located in this graphic. And by the way, I know that I speak rather quickly. I live in the deep south in Texas, Houston area, so people usually tell me I need to slow down. Meanwhile, everyone from the north is telling me, you have this drawl, will you just say what you mean? So I'm trying to hit a nice medium, even though we only have 40 minutes left. So where did I find the andragogical topics that we're going to focus upon during part 1 of our discussion? I love Tomorrow's Professor. It's a nice little listserv e-newsletter that comes out weekly, bi-weekly. So this is where I obtain the first 6 points, even though there are 12 points in this dozen things you need to know about adult learning. We're going to focus on the first 6 points and frame our discussion through these different points. So, strange little thing that I always think about whenever I'm looking at developing a new online course, planning out a face-to-face or a hybrid type course environment. This comes from my background with learning theories and having to teach learning theories over and over again, and recognizing the fact that until people are actually having to see the differentiation between the implementation of different learning theories within an instructional environment, we don't really get it. So these are different questions that I bring forward that I ask people whenever I'm working with collegial faculty or my students or instructional designers. These are questions that I always bring forward to figure out who we are. So these questions, it's an understanding of who we are as a self, and it's not good or bad or indifferent. It's just, what are our belief systems? So my first question is always, how does the instructor believe that he or she learns? And I'm always asking myself that, how do I believe that I learned? Myself, I am all about being a behaviorist. I want to learn from a behavioral cognitive realm. Tell me what I need to know, tell me why it's important, and let me think about it. Let me work it out in my own brain.
Thank you.
But I hate the whole little hands-on group work thing. It drives me crazy. It wastes my time. Let me figure out what I need to know and go do my job. But so few people are like that. So I found that interesting in myself, being able to recognize in myself who I am. But how the instructor believes that other people learn is also vitally important. So just because I learn that way doesn't mean that everyone else learns the same way that I prefer. So looking at it from a learning theory standpoint, I was shocked when I had a discussion with some students and some colleagues many years ago. And I was saying, no, I'm very much behaviorist. Cognitivist, yeah, but very much behaviorist. Very controlling, need to focus on the knowledge, blah, blah, blah. They're like, no, you're not. You're more of a cognitive constructivist. Like, I was so offended because everyone I'd ever dealt with were radical constructivists, where we walked into a room and my instructor, whom I was paying very well to teach me, would just say, hey, figure it out. Like, what? No, I am not that person. But I had to work through all of that for myself to figure out how I believe other people learn. And I hadn't actually gone through the process of thinking about that before until I started having these discussions. So that's why I'm bringing that forward as something important. How do we ourselves believe that we learn is just as important as how we believe other people learn. Now, within how do we believe other people learn, there is the question about how do we believe a subject is best taught. My area of specialization is not only curriculum theory, but my primary area is instructional design and technology. So online learning, multimedia, gaming, simulations, all those type of environments. So how do I believe that my subject is best taught to my learners? Recognizing that I know I learn a certain way, I believe I learn a certain way, that I believe others learn best in a different way than perhaps I do. And the subject matter, how is that subject matter taught most appropriately for the audience, for the learners? All of these questions become conversations, and we understand so much more about each other because I'm so different than my colleague who's right around the corner, who's right down the hallway, who's instructing in the room next to me, who I was lucky enough to win an Outstanding Professor Award, and a colleague, a good friend of mine, also received the award the next year. And we were talking about our different learning styles and instructional styles, and we realized we were so different, but we also have such different subject areas that we instruct, which would make sense for our learners. Okay, so 3 things to think about. Then, how does the instructor actually instruct? Just because you instruct one way in a face-to-face environment doesn't necessarily mean that you're instructing the same way in a hybrid/blended learning environment versus an online environment, much more a mobile learning environment. So we all have different ways of instructing within the different environments in which we find ourselves. So just because something works well in a face-to-face environment doesn't mean it's going to work just as well within an online environment or within a hybrid blended. I keep using hybrid and blended because it's basically the same thing, where you have partially online and partially face-to-face. So I'll just use blended from now on. Within a blended environment, we instruct differently. And it's important to recognize that about ourselves, but also our learners learn differently. And then how do we as instructors design online courses and face-to-face courses as well as hybrid courses? How do we design these courses? How are they framed out? So all of these things for myself are so much different than for someone else, and I love having these discussions with people because such strange outcomes become realities and points that I have an opportunity to learn from others, just like others hopefully have something to learn from myself. So, number 1, From the Today's Professor post, the number one point is most adults are actively involved in learning and undertake at least one learning project every year. From an andragogical standpoint, remember that graphic we were talking about, pedagogy versus andragogy. The bullet points from the andragogical realm may be the learner is responsible for his or her learning, the ability to assess gaps, a gap analysis per se, between where one is now and where one wants to be. An adult is much more viable and stronger at doing this than perhaps someone who is younger and not as self-aware and had as much life experience. And then learning is organized around life/work situations rather than subject matter units, which is a difficulty in my little world. It's really very difficult to frame instructional design, recognizing that learners are thinking about situational learning efforts rather than subject matter units. So that's a little trick that I love playing with, just because you never know what the outcome is going to be in the instructional environment. So within my course environments, the case study-based assignments are vitally important in my courses because not only are my students from so many different realms of expertise and knowledge base, but they're very focused upon not only completing coursework and gaining the knowledge base and experience, but also the alignment is very clear between what am I learning and exactly how is this information going to be useful in my career path. So we focus very much upon case-based study assignments. Everything revolves around teamwork and case-based study environments because that's the real world. So real-world implementation, usually the cases are framed within the work sites, and when they're in team environments, they have to choose one work site from one of the team members to focus upon. And it's their choice. I don't get involved. You figure it out. You're adults. And so everything around the assignments are focused upon case studies within the worksite environment and collegial analysis of coursework. All of our students make their efforts public because the important thing is not only my evaluation, but also everyone else offering their analysis as well as learning from each other. There's always a new idea, a new slant that someone hasn't considered, and so we focus upon that effort. And then professional reflections. I'm very involved in the concept of professional reflections and reflective professionals and being able to recognize what are the strengths, weaknesses, and areas that I still need to learn more about or become a little more cognizant of. So bulletin board reflections and reflective manuscripts within all of my courses are important for the learner to implement. And most of my student colleagues get it by the end of the course because they start going back and realizing after they're sharing their information publicly with our course colleagues, as well as going back and reflecting upon what they wrote, they start seeing patterns in their behaviors and their understandings or perhaps misunderstandings, and they start reflecting upon how they can work better. So being a professional and being able to reflect and bring forward their own concerns and considerations from a professional discussion arena is a huge aspect of our course environment. So, adults have the ability to learn successfully through their lives is number 2. From an andragogical realm, different changes or considerations in people's lives usually trigger a readiness to learn, which many times that's why I find people coming into my classes, they're not necessarily comfortable with where they are in their career path. They're looking for a new career path. They are looking to enhance their career understanding because they see where their job may perhaps die out at some point, and they want to make sure that they walk into a new career path. A lot of students that I'm having recently are graphic designers, strangely enough, who, because of the online instructional realm, graphic designers are wanting to become instructional designers, developing the training environments, because they are so closely aligned and the cognitive understandings are inherent. So the need to know in order to perform more effectively in some aspect of one's life, obviously important. Learning must have a relevance to real life tasks. And then internal motivators, self-esteem, self-efficacy are vitally important. Recognition, better quality of life, self-confidence, self-actualization are all reasons that people want to engage in learning from an adult perspective. makes sense. So within my online courses, I try to engage these aspects. Self-efficacy is huge, especially because I teach so many technology-heavy courses. Yes, they're theoretically heavy and research-heavy, but they're also technologically heavy. And so many people walk into my classes saying, I'm afraid of technology. It's like, it's just technology. What can you do? Break it? Big deal. It's so cheap these days, and you just restart it. It's not a big deal. But this is an issue for a lot of people, and self-efficacy is vitally important in my classes to support people towards recognizing that it's just a tool. Just like a pencil, just like a piece of chalk, in an instructional environment, a computer is just a tool, a browser is just a tool, a learning environment, learning management system is just a stupid tool. It is only as good as the person who is developing the product. So self-efficacy within that environment is vitally important for my students to achieve. Cognitive vulnerability, this is a little theory that I've been developing over several years now. Vulnerability within the psychological realm is considered a level of depression, and that doesn't make sense to me because with it, my understanding, I was working with a student, an international male Muslim student who was very insecure. And over a couple of semesters, we had developed a very strong relationship, instructor relationship with him. And he was earning A's in my classes, where in other classes with other instructors, he was perhaps not doing as well. But he earned his A. I'm known as something of a nasty instructor. I'm hard. So if you don't earn your A, you don't get your A. And this student was earning A's, yet he went into another instructor's class and he failed miserably. So I was asked to offer the instructional environment for this student the next semester so he could pass. I'm like, yeah, sure, no problem. And I started recognizing this student had cognitive blocks because of whatever happened beforehand, whatever experiences he had dealt with. He could not achieve an A range. At best, it was a C, B minus range. He couldn't recognize and cognitively engage in short-term nor long-term memory with the subject matter because of, I suggest, prior experiences. So this is where the cognitive vulnerability theory started growing, from implicit memory, long-term memory. How do we control situations and learning environments and develop supportive environments where the learner can be cognitively vulnerable and frame Vygotsky's whole conceptual framework of understanding and Wittgenstein's social discourse, how we talk to each other and how we frame information and discuss subject matter does impact the way we think about information and understand information. So that's where this little cognitive vulnerability came from. And it's something that I consider very important within my instructional environments. Lifelong learning. Within, again, my realm, we have so many open source opportunities that are out there, whether it be knowledge base or different technological realms that we can use as freebies throughout the rest of our life. And of course, free online technology tools. Zoom that we're using right now as our video conference environment, they have a free arena, which is what we're using. Today's Meet has this little free environment that we can use at will. There are so many different tools that are available and viable within the instructional realm, and it's not as if we have to pay $5,000, $6,000 for some software tool. There's a parallel, perhaps sometimes stronger, tool available for you that is open source / free out there. And then teaching others to engage in implicit cognition, long-term memory, and long-term behaviors. Number 3, adult learners bring a wealth of experience to the teaching learning setting, and this experience can be a valuable resource. From an andragogical realm, the learners bring great volume and quality of experience. Adults are a rich resource for one another, and experience becomes a source of self-identity. So from a self-efficacy standpoint, I try to engage the learners consistently within different forms of knowledge usage so that we can move from lower order thinking skills to higher order thinking skills. The learner brings a great volume and quality of experience, which sometimes we have to think about the conceptual framework of understanding Vygotsky stuff to ensure that everything, all the connections are made within our subject area of expertise, our field, that is correct and viable which may not always be the case depending upon what experience have occurred prior to, what instructional efforts they had achieved, that may not necessarily be as viable as what they're trying to achieve in a course that they're taking now. So Wenger's Learning in Landscapes of Practice, you may have heard of Wenger before. We have the whole community of learning environment, and Wenger came up with a community of practice environment. And recently, Wenger has moved on from community of practice into learning in landscapes of practice. And I recognized when I started reading this about learning in landscapes of practice, oh, that's what I've been doing now. He's just put a label to it. Okay, got it. So that's vitally important within my realm of understanding. Anything that we're doing in my courses have to be viable within the real world environment, and they have to go out and use it within the real world environment, and then come back reflecting and analyzing what occurred and what could have been done better, what kind of feedback they received. So collegial professional communities is something that I engage within my courses, and whenever the basic idea behind a collegial professional community, whenever someone develops a product, whether it be a manuscript, whether it be a technological product, an infographic, or a video chat training session or something like that, they have to take it out to their outside collegial communities and show it and obtain analytical feedback. So I refer to the students as colleagues in our courses, and we highlight good ideas and efforts within our courses. Privately, I ask students to share great ideas that they're sharing with me or questions that they've asked me, and I offer them feedback. My response is usually, this is a really brilliant question, and it would help quite a bit if you could please consider sharing this with our colleagues in our course so that everyone has this information. And instead of me doing it, I ask them to do it, because it's an engagement with the knowledge, but also it's a reflection of, I was proactive, I'm a leader, and I am sharing this with you because I recognize the fact that you want to know just as much as I do. Just because I asked first, great, but I'm sharing with you now. And it creates a strong bond between our colleagues and our courses, and the ideas and resources that our course colleagues bring forward. I'm always revising our classes because someone is bringing forward a great idea that I hadn't considered before. I didn't know about such and such tools, so I'm always integrating new and different things. So what happened last semester is going to be different than what happens the next semester. But within collegial professional communities, not only do I consider that to be our online course environment or our face-to-face course environment or our blended learning course environment, but it extends beyond to their other university professors that they're taking, their other course colleagues. It extends to their family, to their friends, and to their work environment, because part of what goes on within the courses that I desire to instruct is that not only is this an in-course effort, but I want you to go market yourself and show everybody else what you are able to accomplish. And within your work environment, not only your work colleagues, but also your work supervisors are vitally important, because it'll get you another job. It'll move you in your career path as well. And I've had, golly, a few dozen people who come back to me and tell me, remember our courses when you made us do this? I can't believe it, but they came back to me and said, we really need someone with your talents and your expertise and your know-how to do this. Here's a job that we want to offer you. And I'm like, absolutely, that's awesome. But it helps them, and it also is great marketing for my courses too. So team-based group assignments. So many people hate team-based group assignments. I'm one of them, because I'm always the one that ends up doing everything, it feels like. And a lot of people have that same experience. So we have a lot of team-based group assignments in my courses because that's the real world. Even though nobody wants it to be the real world, that's the real world. We all have to work together. So we have video conference discussions, much like we're doing now, but it's much more engaging and everybody's involved in, for example, several of my courses for our readings. We have video-based discussions about the readings, and we have small team groups, and everyone discusses them and then posts them within our course environment for everyone else to read, to listen to, and offer feedback on, and analyses, and adding additional information. And it's amazing how much people actually want to engage in this style of communication. So, and then we have case study assignments, which I mentioned earlier, and a peer review analysis. It's not just you submit an assignment to me and I review it. We still have the professional communities out in the field, as well as we share our products with our peer groups, which is a form of ensuring that the best possible quality product is made available, viable, but it's also useful to the learners to understand that this is not just for the instructor to view and grade, but it's for everyone. Oh, jeepers, we have about 10 minutes left. So it's important to recognize that decisions you make about how you will teach are based on whether you are trying to change attitudes and values, skills and performance, or knowledge and factual information. So instructors' personal philosophical beliefs will impact this. Of course, alignment of student efforts throughout the course experience and implementing a mixed bag experience also supports the learner's efforts, considering whether we're talking about integrating video conferences, infographics, different podcasts, which are so easy to implement, and of course word processing assignments and websites and blogs that they develop as well, which so many people are afraid of, but it's so easy, it's amazing. Most adults learning is self-directed, so a semi-open-ended assignment where I frame an assignment for the learners, and we do have evaluation rubrics that are clearly laid out, the expectations of what is considered exceptional enough to pass and then just not acceptable behaviors and products. And list of specific resource options are also available to them. So if they have to develop a podcast, I give them 2 or 3 different resources to go out, analyze, and decide which of the podcasting resources they want to use. Whether it be something as simple as Spreaker, where you just use your iPad or iPhone or smartphone or computer that has a video and audio enabled effort to create their product, to blog talk radio, which is a much more higher end product. So, and then we have course format. It has to be clean and repetitive and very clear where all the information is. I find so much feedback. I love talking to my students. And so much feedback that I get from the students is that, I could actually find information in your class. I didn't have to go tracking it down. I knew exactly where to go to find everything. And I'm like, well, yeah, this isn't a strange little way that I have control issues. I want you to be able to find the information and be successful. But the feedback I hear is that, well, that's not the way that a lot of courses are designed. Interesting. I find the feedback so always. And then we always have mandatory reflections and peer group evaluations, and of course collegial community analyses, where I mentioned before about we have the work colleagues and the supervisors who have to review the course assignments, and the family and friends, and then of course the academic colleagues from within course as well as outside of course. And the last one that we're talking about today is the need for adult learning is often triggered by some kind of developmental transition or crisis. And I find that people's career journeys, the need for an advanced degree, to advance professionally, shifting career path for whatever reason, family, home, reality, or a lot of people are just lost professionally. They happen to take a class from me because it's an easy add-on elective for their program, and then they all of a sudden realize, oh, I'm good at this. I can change over, and I've decided I don't like my K-12 classroom teaching gig anymore. I want to go into business industry. It's like, absolutely, you can become a trainer. Actually, in business and industry, people want K-12 classroom as trainers because you already know how to control a classroom. You already know so much about the instructional design aspects of it. And then shift from degree completion towards more of a lifelong journey. Pardon me. Sorry. Shift from degree completion to more of a lifelong journey where it's not about just I want the degree anymore. It's about what can I learn to make my life better. And then collegial community of learners, again, the cognitive vulnerability aspects, the play is so important in my classes. From not just you have to be able to do something and do it well, we shift over to just try it and see what happens. What is the worst that can possibly happen? You learn something? Perfect. Excuse me. And then innovative creativity. I want my learners to be innovative. I want them to think outside the box. And from a lot of students, I get feedback that this is a really strange environment. I've never been asked to go beyond the bounds that have been set for me in a class. Like, innovate. Come up with a new idea. I get bored reading the same thing over and over again. You tell me something new and explain to me why it's interesting and vitally important.
Caroline,
Yes, sir.
can you ask whoever is the 919 number to mute, because what it seems to be interfering with your voice coming in through us.
Oh, really? Norrin, I'm not sure if everybody heard you or not, but whoever is the 919 number calling in, if you could please consider muting it, because it seems like there's a little bit of interference and you're gaining control over me. And of course, that's an issue. Thank you, Norrin.
Yeah. Okay.
So we have about 5 minutes left. What kind of questions, comments? I know I ran through, and this is a lot of information in a short period of time, but what kind of questions might everybody have?
I would like to ask our beloved department chair, just so you know, you have an amazingly diverse group of colleagues. You have colleagues who are in our doctoral program. You have colleagues in our department. And of course, you met Dr. Linda Wilson-Jones, our department chair, but I want to pause real briefly with the time we have left with the recorded session to ask Dr. Wilson-Jones to pop out with her innovative question or thought.
Caroline, thank you so much. I just sent an email, a chat to Dr. Moffitt saying that you are so good, and we can hardly wait for part 2 to come into effect.
That is so kind of you.
Right. I am scheduled to teach the adult learner a course this summer, and I have learned so much from what you're saying this morning or this afternoon, and I really, really do appreciate it. So with your permission, I would like to be able to inject or infuse some of the things that you've mentioned here today into that class this summer.
Yes, ma'am, absolutely. And we have a video conference. I'll be happy to jump in if you want me to jump in to your conversation in class at any point.
That would be awesome. The class starts, I think it's the first week in June, and it runs throughout the month of June. So I'll be getting with you and Dr. Moffitt and seeing about arranging something for several sessions that you can come in and listen in, and we might even be able to set up the Zoom for that particular time as well.
Absolutely, that sounds like fun. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
It'll be a pleasure.
I just love innovations in department chairs. Thank you.
It's fun, isn't it? You never know what'll happen next.
It is a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Caroline, over our many years of collaboration, there are some higher ed doctoral candidates on here. If I believe when I look down the list, I think I saw Veronica Crawford, which is interesting. Are either of you still on and would like to interject a quick question? I want to definitely get our docs in.
How do you, can everyone hear what I'm saying?
Yeah, go ahead, keep talking, because we have a short window.
Okay, well, just like to say, first of all, good evening, Dr. Caroline Crawford. It's really been a pleasure. I've enjoyed the session. I am very, very interested in teaching, especially in the adult realm, particularly community college level students. And I've learned a lot through this session. Thank you very much for your time.
Oh, you're wonderful. Thank you. Especially within community college, that's one of my little favorites, especially the developmental courses, because self-regulation is so important. And I've had so many students who actually teach the developmental courses at community colleges, and the self-regulation component is the thing that seems to make the difference. So many of my students have gotten jobs just by silly little things, adding a checklist to the course to make sure that they're learning how to learn. And I never learned how to learn when I was going to high school, so undergrad was just a surprise to me. So it seems to be a huge thing going on in community colleges these days as well. It seems that we have less than a minute. Norrin, I'm sorry, I just love to talk. One of my favorite topics.
I wanted this to be a way for you to introduce. We will have the recording, and I'll make it available, and we will arrange for a time with between you and Dr. Wilson-Jones for the part 2 in the spring semester. But real
Absolutely.
quickly, I'm going to send out a survey with other questions and things where you can give feedback and on a Google survey form. And I'll be sending that out so you can still have continued follow-up.
And next time, Dr. Moffitt, a little bit